Imagine waking up one crisp autumn morning in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a small town where neighbors greet each other by name and the streets hum with the quiet rhythm of everyday life. For 19-year-old Michelle Martinko, this morning was no different from any other. A high school senior with dreams of dancing on stage and a part-time job to support her ambitions, Michelle was the embodiment of youthful promise. On October 30th, 1979, Michelle kissed her mother goodbye from the porch of their red brick home. Carrying her school bag, she walked steadily down the driveway, the cool air brushing against her face as the first light of dawn broke through the trees. Her mother watched from the kitchen window, smiling softly as her daughter waited for the bus to take her to class. But that smile would soon turn into worry. Hours passed. The bus came and went, but Michelle never appeared. Calls to friends and school administrators revealed no sign of her arrival. Panic rippled through the community. A vibrant young life had simply vanished without a trace. Neighbors organized searches, combing parks, alleyways, and nearby fields. The police were called in, their officers methodical but grim-faced as they faced the unknown. The tight-knit town, usually safe and predictable, was suddenly gripped by fear and confusion. What had happened to Michelle Martinko? Where had she gone? And why was there no sign, no clue, no cry for help? This was the beginning of a nightmare that would unravel a dark secret lurking behind the facades of small-town America. The search for Michelle stretched into the cold afternoon, with growing dread shadowing every step. Friends, family, and volunteers combed the neighborhoods, their calls echoing through empty streets. As darkness approached, hope waned. Then, the unthinkable happened. Not far from Michelle's home, in a field bordered by tall grasses and broken fence posts, a hunter stumbled upon a grim sight. There, hidden beneath the rustling weeds, lay Michelle's lifeless body. The community's worst fears were realized. The crime scene was hauntingly silent. There were no signs of a struggle, no frantic footprints or broken branches. The only brutal evidence was the cruel mark of strangulation around her neck, a silent testimony to the violence that had been inflicted. It was as if Michelle had known her killer, had not fought because the horror came from someone she trusted, or at least recognized. Her family was shattered. The vibrant young woman, full of life and promise, was gone, murdered in cold blood, mere blocks from the home she loved. The peaceful town of Cedar Rapids was suddenly a place of grief, suspicion, and fear. Police investigators flooded the scene, meticulous in their search for clues. Every inch of the field, every blade of grass was scrutinized. But the case seemed to defy them. No murder weapon was found, no fingerprints to follow, no eyewitnesses. The perfect crime. As the news spread, the town began to question its own safety. If someone could kill Michelle, a familiar face in their quiet streets, then who was truly safe? The investigation had begun, but so did a haunting mystery that would grip Cedar Rapids for years to come. In the days following Michelle's tragic discovery, attention quickly turned toward those who lived closest to her, especially the quiet neighbor next door. To many in Cedar Rapids, he was an unremarkable man, blending into the background like the faded paint on his weathered porch. No one paid much attention to him before, but now his presence felt heavy, suspicious. Whispers began to circulate. Neighbors recalled seeing him lurking near Michelle's home at odd hours, his gaze unsettlingly fixed. Some described a man who watched too intently, whose silence spoke volumes. A chill settled over the street, replacing the warmth of familiarity with dread. Police took these accounts seriously. When investigators questioned the man, they uncovered a past marked by unsettling behavior, reports of stalking, manipulative tendencies, and previous run-ins with the law that had never escalated to conviction. Behind his quiet exterior lay a history of control and violence, hidden in plain sight. The community held its breath as the man was arrested and taken in for interrogation. Many hoped that this would bring the nightmare to an end, that justice would finally be served for Michelle. But as the days unfolded, cracks began to appear. His confession was inconsistent, vague, and at times contradictory. Crucial details were missing, and evidence that could tie him directly to the crime remained elusive. Despite the shadows hanging over him, doubts began to creep into the minds of investigators and townsfolk alike. Was this man truly the monster next door, or just another piece in a much larger, darker puzzle? The search for truth had only just begun. As the investigation progressed, the neat narrative of a single, sinister neighbor began to unravel. The man arrested next door, once the prime suspect, started to falter under scrutiny. His confession wavered, details shifted, and inconsistencies multiplied. Police began to question his reliability. Was he hiding something or simply covering for someone else? Then new testimonies emerged. Witnesses spoke of another figure, a shadowy presence seen lurking near Michelle Eddy's home on the morning she disappeared. Unlike the quiet neighbor, this individual was volatile, known in the neighborhood for erratic and violent behavior. Yet for reasons unknown, he had largely escaped police suspicion until now. The discovery threw the entire case into disarray. Evidence that should have been clear was missing or mysteriously lost. Surveillance photographs vanished without explanation. A key informant, once willing to talk, suddenly went silent. The once promising investigation now felt like a fragile house of cards, teetering on the edge of collapse. Behind the scenes, rumors swirled of internal conflicts within the police force. Officers whispered about pressure to close the case quickly and about leads deliberately ignored. The community's faith in justice began to erode as confusion and fear spread. Parents kept their children indoors. Neighbors cast suspicious glances at each other, unsure who to trust. The darkness that had crept quietly into Cedar Rapids was now impossible to ignore. In this growing fog of doubt, one thing became painfully clear. The truth was more complicated and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Months into the investigation, a breakthrough arrived in an unexpected form: Michelle's diary. The worn, torn pages, some missing, others stained, had been discovered hidden away in a forgotten corner of her room. What remained was enough to send a chill through the police department and the community alike. Within the fragmented entries, Michelle's voice came alive again, raw, fearful, and desperate. She wrote about the growing sense of being watched, of footsteps lingering outside her window at night. She described strange noises that unsettled her sleep and a creeping dread she couldn't shake. But most disturbing were the hints of someone close, someone she trusted, who made her feel unsafe. The diary didn't name names, but the fear was palpable, a shadow cast over the innocence of youth. Police pored over the diary, cross-referencing dates and details with witness statements and suspect timelines. The neighbor E.S. alibi began to crumble as investigators noticed discrepancies with his whereabouts on nights Michelle felt watched. His silence became deafening. Meanwhile, another suspect emerged, a man with a volatile history, known for jealousy and an obsession with Michelle. Witnesses described him as unpredictable, with fits of rage that terrified those around him. His presence near the crime scene that morning was confirmed by several accounts, though the police had not seriously considered him before. The diary breathed new life into the investigation, but also deepened the mystery. Two suspects, two motives, two dark secrets, yet neither held the full truth. The quiet facade of the town began to crack, revealing a web of fear and suspicion stretching far beyond one tragic night. As the investigation plunged deeper into the shadows, what emerged was not just a murder case, but a tangled web of secrets, lies, and manipulation that seemed to ensnare the entire community of Cedar Rapids. The more the detectives uncovered, the more complex the picture became. and the more dangerous. Two men now stood at the heart of the inquiry. The quiet neighbor, once considered the prime suspect, and the volatile man whose obsessive tendencies had only recently come to light. Both had motives, both had reasons to be near Michelle on that fateful morning, yet neither had conclusive evidence tying them definitively to the crime. Conflicting witness testimonies only muddied the waters. Some swore the quiet neighbor was lurking near Michelle's driveway in the hours before her disappearance. Others insisted they saw the volatile man pacing the nearby streets, his temper flaring. But when these accounts were cross-checked, inconsistencies appeared. Memories conflicted, timelines clashed. As the town grappled with fear and suspicion, psychological profiles were drawn up. Experts painted chilling portraits of the suspects. The quiet neighbor was described as a master manipulator, calm on the surface, but driven by a hidden need for control. His quiet demeanor masked a dangerous mind capable of deception and violence. The volatile man, by contrast, was impulsive and driven by jealousy, prone to emotional outbursts and a blind obsession with Michelle. Both men were dangerous, but in very different ways. In the middle of this turmoil, the quiet neighbor vanished. During a routine transfer between detention facilities, he slipped through the cracks, disappearing without a trace. Panic spread through law enforcement and the community alike. How could a man, charged with murder and considered highly dangerous, simply disappear? Was he silenced? Or was he running from something even darker? This disappearance deepened the mystery and gave rise to whispered rumors. Some suggested a cover-up involving powerful forces within the town. Others spoke of a secretive group operating behind the scenes, pulling strings, intimidating witnesses, and manipulating evidence. Police officers themselves became wary, unsure whom to trust within their own ranks. This shadowy network was rumored to have connections spanning politics, law enforcement, and local businesses. Those who dared to speak out were met with threats, or worse. The investigation, once hopeful, now felt suffocated under layers of fear and corruption. Michelle's family found themselves caught in the crossfire, their grief deepened by frustration and helplessness. Yet fueled by a desperate need for justice, they refused to be silenced. They pushed relentlessly, demanding transparency and accountability. Their fight inspired others in the community to come forward, sharing stories of intimidation and silenced voices. As detectives peeled back the layers, it became clear that Michelle E.'s murder was not an isolated act of violence, but part of a broader pattern of control and fear. The darkness that had taken her life was entwined with a system designed to protect the powerful and punish the vulnerable. Despite this, cracks began to form in the network's armor. Anonymous tips, overlooked evidence, and brave witnesses slowly emerged from the shadows. Every small revelation was met with fierce resistance, but also with growing hope. The community watched with bated breath as the investigation wove through the tangled threads of deceit. The monster next door was no longer just a single individual. It was a symptom of a far-reaching sickness lurking beneath the town's surface. The more the truth threatened to come to light, the more dangerous the path became. But for Michelle's family, for those who believed in justice, there was no turning back. The web of secrets was vast and dark, but it was beginning to unravel. By now, the weight of the investigation pressed heavily on Cedar Rapids. The hopeful pursuit of justice for Michelle Martinko had devolved into a tangled nightmare of obstruction, deceit, and shadowy machinations. What had initially appeared to be a straightforward murder case was increasingly revealing itself as a carefully orchestrated cover-up, one that implicated not only suspects, but entire institutions entrusted with protecting the community. The police department, once regarded as a bastion of law and order, found itself at the center of a storm. Internal whispers suggested that certain officers were actively working to derail the investigation. Reports surfaced of missing evidence, Surveillance tapes vanished, forensic reports went unfiled, and crucial witness statements were inexplicably altered or dismissed. Whistleblowers spoke of intimidation, threats, and coercion, warning that digging too deep could come at a personal cost. Michelle's family, desperate for truth, encountered resistance at every turn. Meetings with detectives yielded vague responses and shifting timelines. Promises to look into new leads fell silent, and investigators who had once been forthcoming grew tight-lipped or suddenly transferred. The family's persistence only seemed to escalate the pushback, leaving them isolated yet undeterred. Behind the scenes, a web of influence was gradually uncovered. Investigators began connecting the dots between key figures in law enforcement, local government, and business leaders. The quiet neighbor and the volatile man, both suspects, were entangled in this network, not just as individuals, but as pawns in a larger game. Both had ties to powerful community members who stood to lose if certain truths came to light. Pressure mounted to close the case swiftly, with a narrative favoring the quiet neighbor as the lone perpetrator. But the more authorities tried to force this outcome, the more glaring the inconsistencies became. Questions lingered. Why had evidence been tampered with? Why did key witnesses retract statements or disappear? Why had the volatile man, with a history of violent obsession, been largely ignored until too late? Michelle's diary, her haunting voice from beyond the grave, became a symbol of what was being suppressed. Pages describing fear, surveillance, and threats pointed to a conspiracy that went far beyond a simple murder. The diary hinted at a culture of silence, enforced through intimidation and violence, that had allowed the real perpetrators to hide behind layers of deception. The community's faith in justice was severely shaken. Parents kept children indoors. Neighbors grew suspicious of one another, and rumors of secret meetings and coercive alliances spread like wildfire. The once tight-knit town felt fractured, its sense of safety eroding under the weight of betrayal. Still, pockets of resistance emerged. Activists, journalists, and some law enforcement officers who refused to be complicit began working tirelessly to expose the truth. Anonymous sources leaked documents. Independent inquiries were pushed forward. Each revelation chipped away at the carefully constructed facade. But the stakes were high. Those who threatened to reveal the network's secrets faced harassment, threats, and in some cases, violence. The disappearance of the quiet neighbor from custody was widely suspected to be linked to these efforts, a warning that the shadowy forces behind the cover-up would go to any lengths to protect themselves. Michelle's family became reluctant public figures, their grief transformed into a rallying cry for accountability. They organized vigils, spoke to the press, and demanded reforms. Their courage inspired others to come forward, slowly breaking the silence that had allowed corruption and fear to thrive. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that the monster next door was not just an individual, but a system, a tangled web of power, complicity, and silence designed to shield the guilty and punish the truth-seekers. For Cedar Rapids, the road to justice was long and treacherous. The real battle was not just to find a killer, but to dismantle the network that had allowed a young woman's life to be stolen and justice to be denied. Yet even in the darkest moments, hope flickered. The cracks in the cover-up were growing wider, and with them, the possibility that truth and justice could one day prevail. As the years wore on, the investigation into Michelle Martinko's murder remained a haunting presence in Cedar Rapids, a wound that refused to heal. The community's longing for closure was met with layers of uncertainty and new, shocking developments that only deepened the mystery. Chapter 8 would mark a crescendo of revelations, betrayals, and questions that challenged everything once believed. The sudden and suspicious death of the volatile suspect shook the fragile fabric of the investigation. Found lifeless in his jail cell, his death was officially ruled a suicide. Yet the scars and bruises covering his body told a different story, one of violence, perhaps inflicted by others intent on silencing him forever. Conspiracy theories flourished. Was he murdered to prevent him from revealing key information? Was his death a desperate act to protect the shadowy network woven throughout the town? Meanwhile, the quiet neighbor who had disappeared from custody remained missing, his fate a troubling unknown. His vanishing act stoked fears that powerful forces had intervened to hide inconvenient truths. The investigation stalled, and the public grew restless. Who was really behind Michelle's murder, and why were those closest to the truth disappearing or dying? In a dramatic turn, whistleblowers within law enforcement and local government began to step forward, anonymously revealing the extent of corruption and intimidation that had long sabotaged the case. Their testimonies exposed a chilling pattern of evidence tampering, witness coercion, and backroom deals designed to protect influential figures who had much to lose. The narrative that had pointed to a lone killer now appeared as a convenient smokescreen. Detectives reopened cold leads, revisiting crime scenes and re-examining forensic material with fresh eyes and advanced technology unavailable during the original investigation. Michelle's diary, painstakingly reconstructed from its fragmented pages, provided new clues, cryptic references to secret meetings, coded messages hinting at alliances between suspects and local elites. The town's dark underbelly was coming to light, but even as truth threatened to break free, danger loomed. Threats against investigators, witnesses, and Michelle's family escalated. The community remained divided between those who sought justice and those who preferred silence. Public protests ignited calls for accountability, demanding independent oversight of law enforcement and local government. The ultimate revelation was staggering. Michelle's murder was not just the act of one or two individuals, but part of a systemic failure, a culture that allowed abuse of power, fear, and corruption to fester unchecked. The monster next door was, in fact, a network of complicity extending far beyond the immediate suspects. For Michelle's family, the fight had shifted from pursuing a single killer to battling an entrenched system that had failed their daughter and threatened countless others. Their advocacy sparked changes, police reforms, new community watchdog groups, and a renewed demand for transparency. Yet the story remained open-ended. The powerful forces behind the cover-up had not all been unmasked. The quiet neighbor remained missing. The volatile man's suspicious death left more questions than answers. The town of Cedar Rapids was left grappling with a painful truth. Justice is often a journey fraught with obstacles, and the darkest monsters can sometimes wear the mask of respectability. Michelle Martinko's story is a sobering reminder that evil often hides in plain sight, and that courage and persistence are essential to confront it. If Michelle's story moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime stories that uncover the hidden truths behind the headlines. Don't forget to like this video to show your support and help us reach others who need to hear these important stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below to join the conversation, share your insights, or ask questions. Together, we can shine a light on the dark and keep these conversations alive.